Absolutely.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you. It's looking forward to Hawaii the end of next week. So that gets me out of the kind of the frosty nights here. So becoming the tropical fish that I am. So um, I love this book from the opening pages. I go through the jacket and the date and the publishing and all of that. And you know how you'd meet people, you kind of get that same feeling with the book. And this is really going to be another wowzer type of a book. And so the first um, few pages is sort of just drew me in and down to the deep end of the pool. It elicited a lot of memories from the past in corporate America. How many times, the question that immediately came to my mind was, how many times have I sat in a meeting and felt as if maybe not the bows and the arrows were pointed at me, not speaking in that way, but that whole thing about safety, that if you open your mouth and you just say maybe something in a contrarian way, it it's going to expose something or an idea that just may not be, I wouldn't say not well received, but that it'll create some tension in the room. And I really liked what he said about the three factors and the going through the sociometer and how that hooks up, to the it checks on the energy of the room. It checks on the individualistic aspect, and whether or not you really want to have a future conversation. And so getting back to that other example of, do I have to go to another meeting? Do I have to go to this meeting? I mean, that's the real anchor draw that pulls me down, but or would, pull me down. Because you just didn't feel connected. Yeah, maybe you could go to a party or go to a something and you could be shake hands and be in a room with people, but you were always somewhat skeptical. You didn't quite have that connection. And so bringing this full circle to, current level of business, I'm someone who does land the plane here in about 40 seconds. Um, I'm doing weekly webinars now. And the energy that you get on webinars and then meeting with individuals, is kind of it's the same thing. It's like either you're sitting next to that blazing furnace and you're feeling the heat and you're feeling the connection, or that thing hasn't been, stoked or turned on in ages. I mean, it's you walk away either feeling cold or you feel really warm. And so this level of connection and the way in which he brings that is has really now created this. How am I coming off? What is that level of kind of like it's like film? How does that the exposure go for others, and are they receiving it properly? And it's in indicative, especially for team building. I mean, there's a lot of aspects that go that safety is, do I want to hug this person? Do I want to shake hands with this person? Can I banter a little bit with them? Is what I'm saying or how the meeting goes, that the aspects of it, do they fit together with me? And my new word is alignment. And am I aligned with these people? Not 100%, of course, we have our own lives, but for the opening salvo, I mean, again, I've got that is now that's a reread. So with this and that, my mornings and evenings are busy.
I'm actually rereading that one with this one too.
Yeah.
Because the Diary of a CEO I read at 2.2. And so I was like, I'm going to read it at 1.7 because his accent and everything is. So I just slowed it down. And I'm just kind of going back through it like, 10 pages a day with alongside with this book too. So just to kind
Yeah.
of reiterate it because there was so much good stuff in there that I just felt like every page was good. But Thanks for that, Ron.
Welcome.
No,
Thank you.
it's an excellent segue into where yes, I kind of same sort of thing. It's I to the same point you said you always kind of look at the beginning, and I did. It's like, so what's the frame of reference on this? So this was written and published in 2018. So that always kind of helps frame like what some of the stories and examples, all still very relevant today. I love the fact that a group of kindergartners can be any other group when it comes to building a spaghetti pyramid. Like it makes me want to actually try that. Like get those things together and be like, how tall? I know the benchmark is set at 26 inches by kindergartners. Can I get a marshmallow at 27? Like I think I can. And
I
so
was thinking I should have hired kindergartners in my insurance agency is what I was thinking. I was like, maybe I've missed something for the last 25 years.
well, so all right, that as you bring that up, that kind of brought me where I was going to go with in part of this is, I think with the company we represent now, they did such a fantastic job at the beginning of making the field the inclusion and the safety. And like I remember the new agent training in Chicago and everything that like just think walking through as they walk us through home office and all the employees there on all the different levels, the corporate, they're standing up, they're applauding the new agents as they're walking through because everything was all about the without the agents, we have nothing. And there was that mindset then. And they did a fantastic job to where now it's like you it's cold to your point. Like there's no heater behind us anymore. Like the things they've done just to make it such a sterile environment without the feeling that support or that you can even go to them with questions. You can't. You got to chat. Like there's nothing you can do that they've taken so much of that personal connection out of there. And so there was a lot of reflection as I'm going through this book, both on kind of the macro and the micro. So like with my own office. And well, it comes with some of its challenges. One of the things I loved there in that last chapter was talking about proximity to people and how close you are and the connections and the conversations and everything else like that. Like my office is only about 600 square feet. It's one wide, big open room. I'm not hidden anywhere in the back, and we are kind of designed in a circle set, not exactly a circle, but everybody can see everybody in the office. Everybody can hear everybody in the office. And I'm like, all right, so that is going to help. But what it also highlights is when everything's going great, fantastic. You get a bad apple in there, which has happened, it's amazing what talk like how that can drag stuff down and just how that proximity aspect of how we are currently laid out and what they talk about, how that can work both really good and really bad. I also wish in another lifetime that I was there at the beginning of Google. Like, are you kidding me? I got to play like hockey with these guys and just checking the CEOs and like just creating that open culture. I would have thrived there. Are you kidding me? Like, this would have been amazing. But just what they did from that aspect, kind of the takeaways of yes, it's okay to challenge everybody all the way up into as they're getting started, challenging the norm. It wasn't, they was Overture or whatever. I hadn't even heard of them before. I think that was, they said, was the front runner to be what ultimately Google became as far as a search engine and just how Google overcame it. And the cool part there was the guy who discovered whatever that little hack was he took it upon himself to help make sure things were moving forward and was going in on the weekends and set up and sent an email at like 5 in the morning or whatever. It was like, hey, I think this is the solution. And it ended up being, it turned it from a 6 million a year revenue to 99. Like, what? That's insane. And he didn't even think anything of it when asked about it years later. Like, this was the inflection point of Google. And it took the interviewer providing pretty much the entire story to the guy to be like, oh, yeah, I guess I remember it. Like, that was just that call, like, or everybody's on board and just building a successful team where it is safe. And I think of it both from, yes, with my team specifically, but I also look at all of our clients in that sense. And I have in the conversations, the way we set stuff up, are we making sure that they truly feel safe in doing business with us, our agency, compared to every other option they have out there and creating essentially a client culture that they have with our office. And so I do think I'm really excited to see where this book continues to go. And then I do like how he's all over the place with World War II analogies and Popovich and talking about the Spurs and just what he has done as those two aspects of where he is going to give it to you as straight as possible, but you also know this guy loves you. I mean, he's giving you a leather bound book at the end of a dinner with your wine label and your menu from that. Like, what? Like, you're it's that's crazy. And so anyways, and I did kind of like because I knew where the story was going with the game six and the Ray Allen shot, and I knew they didn't win it, and I'd forgot that, yeah, the next year they did, and I love that they kept the champagne corked and they popped it next year when they beat Miami in five, and it's like, there you go. So, anyways, I've been enjoying it. I love the parts like kind of all over the place, and I, just the humanity in war when he was talking about those World War One in the trenches examples, where it's like at the end of the day, they're more alike than they are different. It just so happened to be the country they were born while they're fighting each other. But the reality is they're sitting there singing Christmas carols in the trenches in arguably one of the worst places you could ever be. And yet there's still that humanity. And ultimately, how did they bust that up? They cycled those people out of there. Like, again, here's corporate and the higher up screwing everything up for everybody. Cycle out those soldiers, get them out of there. Let's get back to war. Like, it's crazy. Like, it can absolutely. So, anyways, really, really enjoying this one. And I didn't read it, by the way. No, I'm just
What?
no.
Oh.
That was all shooting from the hip.
All right, I'll jump in. So, I'm really enjoying this book from the perspective of I'm in the process of building a new team right now, and I haven't been in that uh realm in a while. And so I'm looking at this from the standpoint of I have a ton of experience building teams in different industries and in different ways. Everything from, in the coffee shop world, although you want a culture, you want a great team. I remember the times when that came down to like, okay, can you show up on time? Are you breathing? Can you push this button and blend this? All right, you're hired. And you're going to be gone in 4 months anyways, because you're headed to college or you're headed back to school and things like that, to where like, although you try to create a culture, it was, it was just different. I remember building teams when I was working HR at Home Depot. And, it's the culture was, what Home Depot said, this is what our culture is, this is what we want it to be. We live our culture, we do all this. But then you can see how like it's not always that way. But you're just kind of a cog in the reel of just making it work, right? But here I am actually in a position where I can literally build my dream team for individuals that will be working side by side with me that, would have the same vision and mission in achieving what it is I'm working really hard to build and create. And I'm looking at this more as another roadmap of, okay, I've done things in the past. What do I want to do differently now? How can I do it differently now? So that way I ultimately achieve that dream team and that culture that just rockets everybody to the top, with what we're building. And so, I liked everything from, the good apples to bad apples, right? We've all learned that along the way. We all know kind of how that works, how, one can bring you down. The hire slow, fire fast sort of a thing, how that incorporates into the cultures. But yeah, I'm just looking at this as a great roadmap of how can you take care that balance between taking care of your people but also taking care of business and getting things done, much like the coach did with the Spurs. I really, he appreciates his people and he takes care of his people. But when it's time to get down to business, he's built this, love and family mentality through the little things of taking care of people on an individual basis. But ultimately, right, they lost. He could have gone a different route and yelled at everybody and been like, oh my gosh, this is what we've been, working all year for. But instead, he took them to dinner. He talked to them like human beings. He ordered their favorite foods,
Brought their families.
that, and said, hey, we may have lost, but like, what do we need to do to become stronger together to make sure that doesn't happen again, right? And that's what I want to do. I want to create something like that where people feel included, but also know when it is time to get to business, we're going to get to business. And if we somehow, stumble or, don't hit the mark on what we're doing, it's not the end of the world, but we'll come together stronger and realize, hey, it's the different strengths of, all of us together that are going to get us there. And what do we need to do to step it up? And so, anyways, I really appreciate the book. And yeah, just another refresher and roadmap to ultimately building a great culture and team.
Be a Jonathan. Make everybody feel safe. Don't be a Nick.
I'll jump in there. I do like the book. I think it's a little bit repetitive, but I don't mind it because of the different stories he's kind of throwing there from all different directions. So I don't mind that he's kind of saying the same things in different ways in each chapter. Um, I do like it, even from the beginning. The whole Nick versus Jonathan. It made me think how many times I've been the Nick. Um, and not had like a Jonathan in the room to turn it around or is my energy so low that I was able to bring everyone else down and like an opposing person or someone else in the room, their energy wasn't high enough to bring everyone else back up. So it did make me think of the times where I have been a Nick, whether it was intentional or not, right? Um, but in my mind, I was like, okay, how can I pivot that and be more like a Jonathan? I did circle that because Phelps said that, oh, this was an outlier group and it was because of one guy. So I literally highlighted because of one guy because in my mind I was like, all right, let me be that guy. I did write really big in my book here, big old chemistry, because it gave you like a whole list of like why the group did so well or why they were able to, you know, re-engage or whatever. He said there was like a lot of close proximity. They were touching or a lot of eye contact or whatever. That just makes it feel more like family, I guess. And then even like what Crystal was saying now, how do I build my team, right? Yeah, we've read all these books. Even the last book he was talking about, oh, they showed up to somebody's grandpa's house with a favorite drink or whatever. I don't remember it anymore, but like all those little things. And there was even an example in this book of I already forgot the company, but they did two different types of training. And they did like the control group where like, hey, we're gonna tell you all about the culture of the company and everything. And that's all they did for the hour after the training. And then the other group, the hour after the training, all they did was ask them questions and how, like, what skills do you think, like, if you were stuck in a certain situation, what skills would you bring? And just being intentional of asking questions about them. Again, I've been writing all over this book, like really big things. So when I flip, I can see it. And I wrote really big, something that Jay always says, leave people with themselves, right? Like ask them questions about themselves and talk to them. And how does that make you feel? And if we were in this situation, how would you like not fix it, but like how would you contribute to that? Um, I liked the whole if there was a part in here where they were saying it's quick when you walk into a room, it's easy to spot already who's the alpha, who's like the slacker, all this stuff, and people that are mirroring each other, people who are trying too hard or not trying enough or whatever. I did circle the mirroring thing because I feel like the mirroring thing is something that we all know, we've heard about, but then he put it only works if we're close enough to physically touch, right? You can try to, and I've read books and I've seen other situations where people try to mirror someone else from across the room or like, oh, I'm going to try to do whatever that person does, but it doesn't read or it doesn't connect you unless the other person's like low-key stalking you too. But I did like that he said it only works if you're like close enough to where you're actually like, hey, we have this proximity, this relationship where we are this close enough to marry each other where, whatever. Um, Let me see what else I have highlighted here. Oh, I did love the Christmas story that Chris brought up.
Mila, Mila, Mila.
I did. I did love the Christmas story that Chris brought up, where they even told them the first time they kind of caught wind of it. The person in charge, the general, whoever it was he gave orders like, hey, tell them if this keeps happening, so and so is going to happen to them or whatever. And it didn't work anymore because it was such a big movement where everyone was being vulnerable, right? Where they're like, you know what, guys, I'm coming out, I'm coming walking towards you. Don't shoot, like we're here together, let's make it a thing. And I highlighted all the stuff that they were there doing together eating, drinking, singing, and everything. It just made it more, to Chris's point, um, more human, I guess. Like we're not just soldiers out here doing whatever they asking us to do. So yeah, I'm really loving the book. Like I said, it's a little repetitive. Oh, I put it really big here. Vulnerability unlocks trust. That was the trench one. And I actually highlighted here, diarists on both sides of that war would refer to the surreality of the event, many describing it as kind of a waking dream. So I like that. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. I don't know if they're gonna keep talking about the same kind of thing, but I like the story, so I don't mind.
Hey, I guess it's my turn. So much has already been said in terms of things I like too. And I really appreciated that the book started with safety because, like all of you, it relates to different areas of either past or current work. And one of the things that I did um, well, not that while ago, but anyway, I used to do workshops for organizations. I'm a wellness coach and I do workshops on stress, anxiety, and burnout. And then 2020, with so much different shifting going on, I started kind of segueing into cultural things, Um, and I always talked about safety first, and I always give this example because I lived in San Francisco for 15 years, so I was always on public transportation and doing different things, and I just love people watching. And one of the things I noticed, and we all do it, and I would always make this my underlying point, is no matter what, no matter where, when you walk into the room, the very first thing you do is you look around. Always, you know? And we look around for different reasons. We look around to see who's in the room, but we're looking for safety. We're looking to see, is it safe? Is it, who's like me, who's not like me? You know, our survival thing goes into play, So I would talk about this in varying aspects, depending on the people group that I was talking with. But safety is so foundational for culture, and Lola ended on what I was going to say also is that trust, because no one's going to have any kind of trust in the culture if they don't feel safe. I've been in many meetings, like what Ron was saying, and different meetings where it's just like, they're like opening it up. Does anyone have anything to say? And I have a zillion things to say, but I'm not going to say anything because I don't feel safe and I don't trust that what I say will be actually well received, you know. So I feel like I really appreciated that was so foundational and in the book I was like, okay, good, and like Lola, I really appreciate all the different stories because I feel like it always brings different perspectives, and I always like that, even though like I got to point the first few pages, like, okay, the stories bring it in terms of like, okay, like you were saying, Lola, like, are you Nick? Are you Jonathan? And just all those different ways, and also um, group dynamics. And I think about the times, and even now, as I'm trying to be very intentional, not only about um, as I'm building teams, but also who I'm surrounding myself with. So for me, it's not so much about even just the culture, but it's like who is in my inner circle, who's close to me and that safety aspect, I mean, and so for me, I'm always kind of, like I said last time, flipping it and looking like, how does this pertain to me so that it can be something that I'm projecting to other people, And so I really appreciated so much of the perspectives and particularly the safety aspect because again, I think that is so key and so crucial. And I really appreciated when, the beginning too, when he was talking about how that one person changed dynamics and was like the outlier group. And none of the things that Jonathan did were like super like he wasn't calling Nick out like, hey, listen, buddy, come on. Let's have an attitude check. I like that it was so subtle, and that they actually had to like study what did Jonathan do to make a difference, And I appreciated that because I feel like that also continues to keep the safety in a group because sometimes if there's a person who's being very aggressively like trying to shut somebody else down, then people are starting to feel like, oh, there's this dynamic of this going on, But just that subtlety of energy of kind of the leaning forward and just the, you know, redirecting gently. And I feel like all those things are so powerful And I love that because I feel like it resonates with me because I feel like I kind of do that, you know. And I've also been Nick. You know what I mean? I've been in places where I'm just like, this is a waste of time. And I'm just like, whatever, you know, body language, energy, everything is just like, all right, you guys are lucky I'm here, you know. Um, but also, you know, how important it is in terms of the sustainability of a culture. And I think that's the thing, you know, because cultures are always shifting and changing because people are. But if there's a foundation, you know, no matter how many different people are coming in and out of the organization or the group or whatever it may be, if there's a foundation that's sustainable, and that's, I think, again, safety is such a huge, important part of that sustainability, then I think that's going to definitely be something that keeps that culture consistent and a place that people want to go. You know, so for me, I'm always thinking about, I want to be the place people like, I want to be in her group, you know, and maybe it's left over from being a little kid, like, I want to be at the popular table, you know, and I decided I'm creating my own popular table, you know, and so I think for me, that's that desire as I'm reading this book. It's just like, okay, it's helping me to like pinpoint the things like what are the sustainable aspects of the culture? How can I create that and be that person so that people are like attracted to like, yeah, I want to do be in Michelle's group or also, you know, sharing that culture with other people. It's like, here's how you do it, you know. So I'm always interested in hearing more stories and what works and what doesn't. So far so good. And like Ron, hi Ron, like Ron and Jay, I'm also still rereading. Um, I've just been nerding out in CEO, Diary of a CEO, and I just feel like I'm not done yet, you know. So I'm definitely like going back because I like to apply what I'm trying to figure out rather than just like highlight, close the book, and then hope I remember someday. So I'm trying to really take certain things. Like I'm literally still processing the knowledge, skill, resources, network, and reputation. You know what I mean? I'm literally still unpacking every day, going, okay, what am I doing to build my knowledge? How am I increasing my skill set? Different book, but all of that translates to this one. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's a really nice companion. So those are my 2 cents.
Very good, Michelle. I love your takeaways. That was awesome.
And you reminded me of
Every
one thing that I meant to say in mine there, Michelle, with what you were talking about there is the safe spaces and everything and the creation of that. And honestly, I think that's what book club has been for all these years, right? We show up once a week. We know it's a place. We can share our takeaways. There's no judgment on anything. Like some books great, some books not so much. Like, did you get this out of it, good, bad, or indifferent? Doesn't matter. But it's been, I think that is honestly, I would say to your credit, like that's why consistently now going on 6, 7 years of book club because this is what this place is, a place we can come together and share it. So kudos to you on that. I meant to say
You
that earlier and I forgot.
You know what? Let me jump in really quick because I feel like Chris, I gotta give you your props. I feel like you're the Jonathan of the book club because you're always here, right? Whether it's just me and you, because there were some
We've
times where
done
it was
that.
literally just me and Chris, and he always delivers. You always deliver your takeaways with the same energy, whether it's with a group or just me and you. So I feel like you're like the Jonathan of the book club.
Yes.
Well, Karis, I don't feel like you're completely right about the judgment thing because I definitely feel like you've judged me for a couple books that I've chosen in the
And you
past.
earned it. You earned
Uh,
it.
so I would say the great Popovich story was bittersweet for me because I do remember the Ray Allen three-pointer and the overtime win and the game 7 win. But I also remember the next year losing to them and then LeBron James leading after that loss to San Antonio. So that sucked. But it was always interesting to me watching him without that perspective because I always just thought he was an asshole. And I was always used to think like, why does his players play so hard for him? Because he just seems like such an asshole in interviews, post interviews. He just was very dry and cold and not really connecting with anybody. And so it was interesting, but like hearing him talk about like touching the elbow, touching the shoulder, or like being in their space, going into practice, joking with all of them, like the things that we don't see that actually really matter in culture. So it was really interesting to see and then even how they chose or how they drafted players and what they wanted to see was a part of their blueprint and if they would fit into that culture inside of that organization. And it didn't matter how good they were. If they didn't fit in that culture, it was like, it doesn't matter how good you are. We don't want you inside of this or messing our culture up. So I thought that was really cool. I love the Nick and Jonathan story as well, because I always try to be the Jonathan, and there's always a Nick in the room, no matter what. Like I remember, even when Lola came on and we were doing EOS, and I felt like sometimes I had a Nick in the room, and his name was John. And so, not Jonathan, but a John, right? Same kind of thing. And so I always kind of felt that a little bit in the room sometimes, and even with Amanda in the beginning of our culture, I always felt like she was the Nick sometimes. And then when I understood her, she wasn't really the Nick. She was just giving me another side. But I didn't want her to do it in front of people, right? I always would have to say, hey, come to me one on one. Let's talk about this because if they see the two top people in the company arguing or disagreeing, it's not a good look for the culture in the agency, right? And I think you have to agree with somebody all the time, but there's a way to disagree with people or doing it in the right place. So, and I always want to create that safe space to be challenged, but not to disagree. Like we get challenged, just talk about it. And I think there's a huge difference there. And then I also think it's easy to be the Jonathan if you really focus on it. But I think it's so much easier to be Nick because most people are pessimistic anyways. So I would say it's harder to be Jonathan, but I think it's all how you interpolate in your head. I think it's really easy to be the Jonathan and be that guy in the room that can kind of change the culture because that's what leaders do, right? And so if you're not in a leadership position, but you're that guy in the room that's super positive and seeing the positive side of things, you naturally become that leader, and then people start to come towards you. Like people don't like negativity, right? Most people like they might talk about negativity, and that's kind of their life. So I like that. And then there was this one comment that I really wish I would have had the articulation of this a long time ago because I like the way he articulated this. And he says, "I'm giving you these comments because I have very high expectations, and I know that you can reach them." And whenever I ask somebody to do something, that's in my head. I wouldn't even ask them to do it if I didn't think they could do it, right? But articulating it in that way, kind of spinning it to them and saying, I'm giving you these comments because I have very high expectations and I know that you can reach them. Just it says a lot about them versus the way I maybe used to communicate that with was about I need you to get this done for me, and I know you can get it done. So it's a completely different thing when you spin like this. So I loved his articulation on that. And then one of the things he said that I also highlighted was personal up close connection, body language, attention, and behavior that translates as I care about you, which he was talking about Popovich, performance feedback, relentless coaching, and criticism that translates as we have high standards, big picture perspective, large conversations about politics, history, and food that translate as life bigger than basketball. So, like when Greg was sitting at the table that night, they weren't talking about the game. He was asking his players his opinions of war, of politics, or things that a lot of people don't go down that road, but it really kind of gave him an insight to his players and the way that they thought and understanding them from, a lot of people are like, hey, get to know people's family, get to know people this, but if you get to know the way people think, obviously you could communicate and talk with them differently. So I really like the book a lot. And as much as I did not like Popovich, now, I like him because, he had a method to his madness and not everyone understood that. And I think that's the best sometimes. Like if you try to do it like everybody else, like, John Maxwell is a great leadership, coach and talks about leadership, but I think he does it in a very fuzzy, kind of way. And I don't know that that necessarily always works with everybody, right? I mean, everyone has different leadership styles, and I think everyone takes leadership differently. And I like how he built that culture. And I think, I see the Miami Heat, which they always talk about culture and the Miami Heat and only certain players fit in. And I see the coach of that team. And you don't really get that much insight to these people, right? Unless someone writes about them or researches them. And I see him in my gym all the time. And he talks to everyone, which he could be above everybody and be like, I'm a Miami Heat professional basketball coach, but he smiles at people, he talks to people, he's not like in his own world. But he seems like the nice guy on the outside, but the Heat culture is not this mentality or attitude of nice guy, right? I mean, those guys are grinders. They get in there and they do what they need to do. I mean, they don't even have a great team this year. I mean, not compared to some of the other teams with big players, and in second place, in the league because they're grinders. And I think that comes from like he is a guy that is not like Popovich when they're on the court, when they're in a game, the game face is on, but outside, he's got a relationship with his players. And I think Popovich had that, but I think he had more of a cold connection, and people were just like, hey, that's Greg. But I think the coach of the Heat has that would be the leader that I would want to be. I would want to have the relationship, because even with Lola, like intentionally, like I want to know what she does on the weekends. I want to get to know what makes her tick and her diet and what she's thinking about because, my wife doesn't understand it. She's just like, why do you get so personal with your employees? And I'm like, because I like to have a connection with the people that I work with because they're family. I don't see them as just a person that's working inside of my business. I see them as a family, chosen family person. So that's kind of the culture that I always want to build in my organization is I want to know my people on a much deeper level. But Lola also knows that there's another side of me that when it's business time, I'm in business mindset. She's like, okay, this is where Jay is right now. And then I'll switch when I want to, connect with her and say, hey, how was your Thanksgiving? How's your relationship? How's things going on? So I think there has to be two sides of every leader intentionally. And I need to get better at it, all aspects of my life. But reading this book, I think is going to help me to be able to do that and put things in perspective. And what I learned from Greg is I don't want to be Greg. Even though he built a great culture, that's not who I am so I don't want to be perceived as an asshole to anybody, the media or my players sometimes or whatever. I want to be perceived as I'm a business guy and I'm also your best friend and also your family member. But when it comes time to getting to work, you're going to see that side of me, but I don't have to be an asshole. I can be serious. So that's what I love about this book so far. And I know we're just in, but it's only 2 more weeks because it's 225 pages. So we got next week and the week after, and we're finished through this one, which is so crazy if you think about you finish a book in 3 weeks. Most people, again, don't finish a book in 3 years, and we're finishing, a pretty substantial educational book in 3 weeks, which is pretty amazing.
I did want to say that earlier because Michelle was saying that, she wasn't really done processing the last book. I remember a long time ago, like I want to say like year two of book club, I had invited a friend and then they dropped out after a while because they're like, this is too fast for me. I'm not even done processing the book. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I mean, mind you, we're reading, if you're reading at the pace we're supposed to be reading, you're getting the amount of pages or that you're supposed to be. And I guess the processing process is a little bit different. But I do like the pace that we go to. Sometimes, yes, it's fast, but I only feel it if I'm behind, right? So I just wanted to tell you, Michelle.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just wanted to tell you, Michelle, even though, we've moved on to the next book and we'll be done with these books in 2 weeks, you know, the processing time and whatever you're thinking, oh, it's too fast, just stick with it because you're still going to get something out of it, even if you didn't get it all right there in this one sitting. Again, you can always revisit it later, whatever the case is, but just stick with it because I know sometimes my friend never jumped back on again. She was just like, it's too fast for me. I like to
Well, you can
sit.
see we already had two people that were on for a couple weeks. The holiday comes, then you lose people,
Yeah.
because they break the habit. I mean, it's a real like my wife, she started a book club and she's got a huge following. She had like 25 people. And she was like, after 4 weeks, I had two people. And she's like, it's just not worth it. And I was like, it's worth it for the two people.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, it's worth it for you. She's like, yeah, but it's just pressure. And I feel this stress. I gotta be caught up. And I'm like, that's good. That's a good pressure to have to feel. That's why I did it. Because if there's no pressure, then you're like, I'll get to it next week, right? As human beings, we just procrastinate and put it off. And it's like, no, I've got to be prepared for this, for accountability. Because if I come to this group and I'm like, okay, guys, I'm behind, like that's just not a good look for anybody or for me. I feel bad. So yeah, I mean, I think the key though, I think for me, where I digest the books the best is if I just read 15 pages of that book 5 days and not try to read 60 pages at once or 30 pages at once. I'm able to digest it. And then I'm able to understand the book. But if I'm trying to crash through, catch up because I got 45 pages to read, like 45 pages is a lot to digest, even though it takes me an hour, it's a lot of information. And like, I mean, you guys talked about some stuff today that, I remember, but I didn't have to talk about in book club, right? So it's like, yeah, I mean, but the whole point is just the information is going to go in and the information that's going to impact you the most in the moment that you are in your life. That's what you got to worry about anyways, right? It's not about, I need to digest 225 pages of this book. I mean, there's just going to be things that hit you that you're going to grab from it and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to add that into my life. the Popovich story, right? The reason stories work is because I'm going to be thinking about that story when I'm interacting with people and being like, I don't want to be Popovich. I want to build a culture like he had, but I want to be like the coach of the Heat, but build a team like Popovich built. So yeah, I think that's good advice, Lola. I don't think Michelle's not I think Michelle's here for the long term. I don't think she's not someone that's going to give up. I know her personality. I can see it in her eyes. So
Well, thank you. And also thank you, Lola, because you know what I do like? I mean, I bounce between both. And so I'm like, oh, dang, what page am I supposed to be on? But what I like about that is that it's keeping me accountable. You know what I mean? That, and it's also really aligned with my desire that I want to read more, And so I've created a whole discipline around it because I'm reading 3 books right now, And so I have my, like, when I get home, I have my like screen time. And then it's like, I give myself like an hour, maybe two depending on what it is, and then the screen's off, and then I'm reading the rest of the night. And then there's something
yeah.
I'm reading at night just before I go to bed. So I feel like it's definitely helped me to just create the kind of habits that I want to have, um, and also keep me accountable that I know that next Wednesday, if I'm like, I don't know what y'all are talking about because I didn't get that far, I don't want to be that person. So,
So the way that it works, Michelle, is what I tell people is Monday through Friday, read 15 pages. And so I do it right when I wake up because if
mm,
I wait till the nighttime, there's something going to come up or I'm going to feel tired or I'm going to want to go to sleep or, whatever. So that's what I do. I wake up, I meditate, I read 15 pages, which takes me like 10, 15 minutes. I also read 3 to 4 books, but our book that I'm reading, I don't ever try to get ahead. Sometimes I do because it's so good, but the book that we're reading, I read 15 pages Monday through Friday. And then if I miss Friday because of golf or something like that, then I'll make it up Saturday or Sunday. So that's the way that I digest the books.
that's a good idea. I also kind of do a little cheat with the podcast, because or
Uh,
like
Yeah.
the auditory because
oh
when I
yeah,
go
yeah,
on
yeah.
walks and things like that, I'm like, yeah, I just got 2 chapters done or whatever.
It
But
depends on the book for me. Like the CEO, I refuse to listen to it on audio only just because there was so much gold in that I wanted to make sure that I have those notes for future reference, future content. So I was like, every time I was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna listen to it in the gym. Every time I turn it on, I'm like, you know what? It's just I'm not gonna remember that. That's really good. So I just stopped it. This one is same. There's a lot of good takeaways, but there has been some books that we like Nate, the Nate one, the comedy one, that was an easy one to listen to on audio.
Well, that do and along those lines, I thought like the 48 Laws of Power, that was definitely one you needed the book, and they also cut a
Oh,
lot out of the Audible.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like so, I mean,
My
there
my
is,
Audible didn't work.
yeah, it was all over the place in that one.
Yeah, my Audible didn't work because it did. I mean, if the Audible doesn't like no, the Audible on this one, there's also some like
Well, he
he
jumps down.
also
Like it's like he added stuff in after the fact, or
yeah.
just like he put it in there and then realized, wait, I
Or when
should
he or
probably.
I think when they're reading it, they just have a thought and they just go with that thought and then go back to where they were reading. I think that's what happened in this book because sometimes when he's doing it, he'll go off and he'll just pause and then it'll
Well,
go.
and you always do it on the Kindle, right?
I do a Kindle and Audible,
Yeah.
yep.
So yeah, in the actual book, like this page is a good example of it. Like in the actual book, here's what
Yeah.
he jumps down to is he's got an asterisk somewhere up here where he's like, okay,
That's
and
his research, right?
well, it's just like the add-in. So like in
Like a
this one,
sidebar.
yeah, it's like he could have very easily just had that as part of the book, like right after where the
It was like
asterisk
an afterthought.
said. But yeah, because I find that too. You're reading, and all of a sudden he just like jumps down, and then he's reading this, and then jumps right back up here and keeps going. It's like,
Oh, you
so
know what? So I went, that's what it is.
so yeah, so like this is because
That's
he's
not in the
twice as
Kindle
small the
though.
font.
They don't
Yeah,
have that. They
so
don't have that part in the Kindle.
gotcha. So yeah, that's what it is with the actual printed
Ah,
version.
okay, that's what it is. Because sometimes it'll just stop and then he's reading something and then he'll start catching back up again. So that must be what it is in the
Yep.
book.
So that's why I thought that same thing too, where it's like it's a little clunky in that aspect, where it's like if it was
Yeah.
good, just put it in the actual book.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's here, but it's not quite like it's goofy. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what's going on.
All right, guys, I gotta jump. I got another meeting. It's so good
Thank you
seeing you
very
guys.
much
We'll
as
see you guys
always.
next
Bye,
week.
thank
guys. See you
you.
next
See ya.
week.
It's getting light.
Yeah.